I'm going to just guest Dustin in, and then I'll do my whole intro piece later from that, because we're running late. We want to make sure you get your money's worth, everybody. I'm guesting him in now. Got it? The not-so-secret wife is helping me out here. I'm inviting Dustin. I'm just waiting for him to accept, and then we'll get started. I met to give you a brief intro in case anyone can hear me now. I met Dustin through the internet. Oh, no response. Sometime last school year, I think, maybe about a year ago. Dustin there's a really big, yeah, but no one could hear me when I did say it. So Dustin with, I'll tell that story in a second. There we go. Let's see if anyone can hear us this time. That was weird, man. I never had that happen before. Let me just wait and see how this goes, and then,
Oh, someone said I can hear now.
They can hear me? Great. All the best stuff already happened. I'm sorry everyone missed the beginning of that, because it was educational gold.
Yeah, we can act like we haven't talked about it before already.
Yeah. All right, so let me just say real quick who's on here with me tonight. This is my internet friend. We've tried to collaborate face-to-face. This is actually the first time that we're really getting to talk, which is really great, because I found Dustin through YouTube. Dustin has a YouTube channel called Discipling Recovery, and he got won this giveaway from Casey Neistat, the super big YouTuber. And Casey, in his video, said something about how this guy was a high school teacher, and he had didn't at that time know any other high school teachers that had channels except for my fledgling channel. So I went and checked it out. Great, and I thought the humor was I haven't even said any of this stuff to you before, but the humor was right along the lines of the kind of stuff that I do that my kids yell at me about all the time. And I was like, dude, this is great. We have to get together at some point. And so this is the first time that we've done this. And then Dustin has sort of a unique, which is what we're going to start with this evening. So can we pretend that no one heard us? Could intro yourself a little bit, Dustin. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
All right. Yeah, my name's Dustin. I haven't been teaching long. I've been teaching for a year and a half. Is it breaking up on your side?
A little bit now. Sometimes it's just glitchy and it'll work out.
Okay. So, yeah, I've been teaching for a year and a half. I used to teach in Florida, and I actually just moved this summer up to South Carolina. Me and my wife moved up here, and so I kind of gave up my job where I was living, and now I'm back to the position where I'm trying to find a new job and go through the whole process of all that. And I was saying earlier that I didn't know. I kind of went online and was like, oh, your teaching license can transfer, no problem. But once I got here and you start going through that process, it tells you oh, well, you have to have 3 years experience, and if you don't, then you have to take the test, and then you also have to have people come in and observe and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, so I'm trying to transfer my license and go through all that, but also trying to start over, trying to find a new job and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a thing, especially when you've already been in the classroom, and it's I don't know, starting from scratch. And I just remember what I was getting to before the sound went out was this idea that I still have people that have to come in and watch me every so often, and I often think there are people that are really, really struggling in the school. And I often, the thing is I often ask my friends to come in and watch me in class. And I'll say look, I'm going to try this new lesson, or I'm going to do this new thing. Could you just be an extra set of eyes? Let me know what you think it looked like. But, every so often, a room and observe you. And it's you don't know who I am or what my situation is. This is just not useful to anyone.
And I know. I noticed that the kids always act different. They're going to act so different when someone else is in there. And sometimes it's a good thing or a bad thing. It doesn't even, but I'm you never act what are you doing? Or you guys can talk, it's not a big deal. You guys can talk, but it's always strange.
Because I always tell them that I will never act different. If someone's in my room, I'm going to be exactly the same, or the principal comes in or someone else. So I want you to be exactly the same as well. So I wanted to open up talking about, you and I talked about teaching with a disability, right? And so this is something I'm excited about with this topic is that I'm largely like pretty much no knowledge of this. Like I've not worked with a lot of people that had any sort of known disability, and so especially like a physical handicap, like no one even comes to mind. And so you talk a little bit about like what your personal situation is and what has been your experience with that so far. Just, I mean, and how maybe even how that ties into like getting a new job. Like, do you think that I don't know.
It was strange for me when I went to go get a job because I didn't know if it was going to be a positive or a negative thing that I was in a wheelchair. And I think going into it made the interview so much more nervous. Like I was so nervous going in. Like, what are they're going to think? Can this guy even do it? And especially as a new, like just graduated, and I can't say, oh, I've been a teacher, so I know I can do it. So I'm going in being like, I think I can do this, like, and not having any idea. Like I know the subject, but I don't know like the challenges that's going to come with it. So luckily, you know, I was given an opportunity, and I don't think when it came to finding, I don't think there was that many difficult, like the biggest difficult things I had to deal with was because with my injury, I don't have no finger movement. So I'm a C5, C6 quadriplegic, so it's basically chest down, and then you don't have finger movement. So holding pens or writing on the smart board, that's extremely hard because you can't grip the marker. But nowadays, you know, with a smart board, and there's other ways around it to, you know, you can type it up on the board, or so you find ways around it. But I think that was the only difficult thing I had with being in a chair. But I think I would say it's more of almost a positive because I feel like I was able to connect with the kids like extremely quick. And I don't know what it was. I don't know if, like I've said this before, if they see, like, a lot of times when you're young, you just think, and at least when I did when I was in school, I would look at a teacher and I'm like, oh, they got it all together. They think they know everything. Like, they have no issues. They have no problems. And I think they come into my classroom now and see me and they're like, well, this guy's, you know, been through some things or something because he's got some issues. So I think whenever they had something going on in their life, I can connect with them better because, you know, I've been through a lot. So I think it kind of helped me connect with the students a little bit better. So I think it's been a big positive, really, for me, more than any negative. You know, things are harder. It takes longer to do things, but in the long run, I think it's made me a better teacher, actually.
That's really interesting. I wouldn't have thought that right off the bat. I mean, just because kids are, I mean, so adverse to anything that's like just different coming at them, or like I know, like and not to say that this is exactly the same thing about here is like an idea that like when something changes, the kids are like, or when something's different or out of the ordinary, they're just like understand. So like, did you ever get like a haircut? And then you go into school and the kids are like, dude, you got your haircut. You can't even handle it right now. It's like, so yeah. It's of even hearing that story that like students felt maybe more comfortable with you. And so let me ask you this in terms of, and then I'm going to start getting to people's questions in a second, but where did you get ideas from as to like how to be creative in class, how to kind of solve some of the problems that you came up against? Like, did anyone reach out? Did anyone say, this is how I do it? I'm in a similar situation, or is it all like, you're just trying to figure it out on the go? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I think I've lived by the motto of like, fake it till you make it. So I really had no, you go through school and they'll teach you stuff and this is how you. But my situation was so much different that I just went in and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna wing it, and if I come across an issue, I'll just jot it down and try to figure it out later. So I basically, because there's nothing online. I've heard of other teachers who are disabled and stuff, but I haven't ran across anything like blogs or anything that to tell you about how you can overcome certain things. So Yeah, I think but I learned that through my life. Like when you get injured, you have to like you forget. It's weird how your whole body works to where you have to learn how to brush your teeth again. Like you forget how to do that. So like when you're in the hospital, you gotta so you're brushing your eyeball and you're brushing like you have no idea what you're doing. So you retrain yourself all the time. So I think it was kind of like that. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to train myself to do it a different way. And so I think that just kind of prepared me a little bit about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one of the questions I'm getting is, what do you teach? So can you talk a little bit about like what do you teach and how did you get into like teaching that particular subject? Did you pick that?
So I teach social science, and the reason is because it's the only subject I liked. when I was in school, I don't even think I liked history or world history when I was in high school. I don't think I was the greatest student when I was in high school, and I think that helps me with the kids now because, like, I see the kids that were like me, and I'm like, this kid's sleeping, like, that's what I'd be doing right now, and this kid, so I'm able to connect with them, and, so I came out, and I was like, what kind of job do I want that I can be, like, a positive influence on people or just do something that, I want a job that has meaning to it, and a job that I'm physically able to do as well. So I just started going to school, and in college I just took a class on education. I was like, I'll just take it. And then you do a little internship stuff, and I was like, this kind of seems, I was connecting with the kids a little bit. This is cool. So I just kind of took off from there, and I was like, well, now I got to find a subject because I don't want to do math, and I like movies and history now more than I did in high school, so I just started studying, and then I just got this passion for history. It just started, the more I started reading about it, then it came along with it, but that's how I fell on it. But social science covers everything from economics, and my first year teaching was intro to social science, so we covered everything from economics to geography and American history, world history, so everything, so.
Wow.
So I got a taste of everything in that.
Nice. And so what would you say like your biggest challenge was when you first started teaching? Like, so you came in like halfway through the year, right?
Yeah.
Was that your biggest challenge? Because I feel like that could be a pretty big obstacle to overcome. Or were there like other things that were like just the hardest?
That was the worst experience. I mean, it was the worst, but then it was the best experience for me in the long run because I came into a position where the teacher was in the military, so he had to get deployed. So he just kind of got up and left, and they kept filling it with subs until they found somebody. For 3 months, they had substitutes in and out. So they really didn't have a teacher. So these kids are just wild now. So by the time I get in there, and they said, observe, we have another teacher in there for a little bit, observe the class, and then you could take over. And I'm just like sitting back watching these maniacs. Like, it was like recess in there. I'm like, oh, and so I just I knew this was going to be rough. So I came in, and the first day they were dead quiet. They were staring at me. They were scared. Then they'll admit to me now that they were scared. And I was like, why am I scared? But yeah. Once they got to know my personality, then they went back to being maniacs the next day. So I don't know if that's where I messed up. Maybe I should have just not shown like a smile. You know how they say don't smile till Christmas break or something like that?
Yeah, that's like the dumbest thing ever.
That's not my person. It's so hard for me not to be like happy and just be, I can't just be like that mean guy all the time. So I think these kids are just used to substitutes, and I came in, but I think from that it helped because the next year I was like, okay, I do not want this, and I do not want this, and I want this. So for the rules and all the rules I'd set up, I knew like how bad it could get, and I didn't want to get in that bad. So.
Yeah. So I just had a conversation with a friend recently where we were talking, if you want to start teaching, start being places where kids are, or put yourself in situations where you might be able to teach or help a teacher. And her I guess like her advice, I'm looking at my, it never appears on screen over here. Her advice was to to get a job like working at like the Salvation Army or like the YMCA after school programs or in the summer, because that's kids are just like the most nuts. And so if you can find any love doing that, then it's like you're going to be all right, because it's not complete, like, because that's like as crazy as it gets. And that always makes me think of like, I'll meet new think that the rooms are crazy, and I'm like, nah, dude, I've seen 100 times worse. Like if a stapler is not getting chucked across the room, like, you're doing all right. Like, don't beat yourself up. So, okay. Oh, hold on. So another question, this comes from Books and Bleachers, said, how do you approach your disability with your students at the beginning? Is that something, that's a really great question. Do you just talk about it?
Yeah.
Or do you let...
I definitely talk. That's the first thing I mentioned, because I know you can see it in their faces. Like, they sit down and they're staring at you. And you're like, I know what they're wondering, like, why are you in a chair? What's wrong with you? So I just kind of go through the whole. I mean, that's the first day, is basically telling them my story, telling them, and then you can just see it like totally disappear. And then they kind of like they'll watch you a lot when you're writing on the board. Like, why is he writing different? Because I have to hold the pen different and write. So they'll always watch, and then as time goes on, they get so comfortable with you, like they don't even. It's just like anybody else. They look past the disability. But yeah, you got to address it on day one, because that's always been in their mind.
You know, that's a really interesting topic, or like being able to how you just kind of get used up looking past that. I heard on Tim Ferriss's podcast the other day, he had this guy on who's an MMA fighter, who was born with no arms and legs. And he is like, I think he doesn't have arms like below the elbow, and I don't think he has legs at all. And so, he has legs down to his knees, but he's accomplished like all these crazy feats, like climbed Mount Kilimanjaro and stuff. And he said the most first introduction, like, right? So like you meet someone and they don't have your hand because you don't have a hand. And so he's like, people are either like real weird about it, like they just be like just call it out, or they get real awkward and he's like not really sure how to handle that. But after that, he's like, it's just like anything else. Like, you get to know someone's personality and you either gel with them or you don't. And if you gel with them, then it's not really, it becomes a non-issue of sorts. Let me see this next question. Davis 52, Davis 5 together, 52 together. Davis, I'm just going to call you Davis. My classroom shoebox. Do you find it difficult to maneuver around your classroom? You had a really great video about this. I think I reached out to you about. Could you talk about that experience a little bit?
Can you say the thing's roboting on me? What was the question?
So the question is, this teacher is saying that his room is a shoebox, and so what about your room? Do you have trouble like maneuvering around your classroom? And I was just saying you had a really great video about that, and I was wondering if you could talk about it.
Because I was in a trailer in the back of the school. They had trailers. So I was in a trailer, and you have about 32 kids in your classroom. So, you know, it's individual. They're trying to get more to where it's one big table and all the kids are in one group. But for now, it's just like individual tables. So you would have to set them up. That was one of the hardest things, is trying to figure out, okay, I got to be able to reach every single kid, but my chair is this wide, and I got to get through the space. And they like to see them in groups, so I had to put the chairs all in like groups of 4 and spread the groups out, and that's the biggest challenge, I think, too. And I almost told them, can you guys get my desk out of here? Like, I didn't want my desk in there at one point, because I was like, it's just taking up room. I'll put the laptop on my lap and just write it out from there, because it's just taking up too much space. But, but I don't know. It's just 32 kids is a lot of kids. I don't know what the average is, but that was an issue for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, in your video, you did show that, like, how the kids had to have all their desks like facing one another, but the desks didn't look like they like went together, and the floor was like laminate or like that kind of like composite tile. So I just can imagine they're like sliding all over the place, and kids are never mindful of, like, I know in my class, like, if they all put their legs or their book bags in the aisle, I just I will literally put my, this is so ridiculous. I can't even believe I'm talking about this. I put my hands on the desks and then I just drag my legs behind me because I'm like, I can't walk down here. I just got to drag myself down the aisle right now because I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to get hurt trying to get over all of your stuff. So did you find that kids were more mindful of that, or like, how did you, like, did the desks keep moving all the time, or what was the situation with that?
Oh yeah, the desks would slide like between. You get the the little 2-3 minute break when the kids leave and the other kids come in. So I would just wheel around as quick as I can, trying to get the chairs back in order. But they were actually really good. Like, they would notice their bag being in the way, and I'd come up, and then the other kid would point out, "Hey, move your bag," and then they'd just grab the bag and move. So they were always, they're really good about noticing, like, if you need help, and they were always good about saying, "Hey, you want me to help you do that, or you want me to help you?" And I always tell them no, but they're really good about always kind of looking out for you, which is good.
Nice. I really like that. I love hearing stories like that. Here's my friend, the Scottish Teaching Ninja. That is her YouTube channel name. She's always on here asking questions. I love it. So she said, do you feel that the institution you worked for supported you appropriately, whether that be any additional needs that you had where they met, any additional needs that you had where they met, or any bias faced in your time there? Did you feel like taken care of, or was it like an issue, or what?
Yeah,
I don't want you to incriminate yourself or anything. Like, I realize, like, I don't want to put you on blast.
Yeah,
but
they're good. They don't. Look, they don't ask. They didn't ask. They never said, "Hey, you need anything?" Or I guess they just kind of leave it up to you. And I never asked for anything. Like, there was things I could have made it easier, maybe, but I'm not the type to go around and be like, "Oh, you guys, that door needs to have that electric push button, and that's not wheelchair accessible." Or like, I've never been that guy, so I kind of just found a way around it. But I'm sure they would have helped if there's anything that needs to be done, but I never asked for it, and they actually never really asked either. I mean, they did come in the first day. I told them the board was too high, and we'd probably need to lower the dry erase board, so they came in and lowered that. But otherwise, they just kind of left you alone.
Yeah. I think one of the things that kind of made me think of, and you also had another video where when you went up to New York City and you were like trying to navigate the subway system and there needed to be elevators and stuff. It's like anything else. When you're not in a situation, you don't think about those things all the time. So like when my mom was very sick when I was younger and she had cancer and she was in a wheelchair and we had to try and figure out like, how do we get her everywhere? Because my answer was always like, dude, I'll just pick you up. Like, I'll just pick you up and then like someone else carries a wheelchair and like, or like me and all my buddies would just like all grab a side of the wheelchair and hoist you up. And so my mom's like, are you kidding me? I'm not getting hoisted all over the place. I'm already she's like, I already have like no hair and I have to wear like this thing on my head. Like, I just like, come on, man. So I just never thought of that. But, after you made that video, my wife and I were on the train in Philadelphia and after a while, like I saw her like looking around and trying to notice things. I'm like, what are you looking for, man? And she's like, there's no way, there aren't any elevators around here. And there's not even a sign letting you know like where to go to one. And I thought, it's really wild. So I think one of the things that, like, this is a little off topic, but one of the things I really enjoy about your channel on YouTube is that you kind of address a lot of those things and like talk about like what is life like in a particular person's shoes, and not just for you, but like that's one of the things I really love about YouTube is I love watching stuff about all different kinds of people that like, what is life like in Vietnam or Australia or New Zealand or the Philippines or so I love that you're doing that because like you said, like you didn't see anything on YouTube about that. No one was talking about that particular issue, and then you just like went for it.
But I also tried. It's a tricky situation too because I also tried on my channel. Like I started just doing it as this is how you should get dressed if you can't, or this is how you put on shoes if you're not able to. But then I got to the point where I don't want to. Like you can go around like I did in New York, right, where you get on the subway where there's no elevator, but I don't want to do it just on that, like, and be negative all the time. Like, oh, here's an issue we have, and here's an issue we have, and just where I'm always like, I know it's not being negative. You're just pointing out some issues, but I try my best not to. I'll lightly put it in there once in a while, but my channel sometimes just shows me having fun with my wife or whatever we're doing. But I try to just focus more on, you know, this is an issue you might run across, but I don't try to be like negative about it and saying, oh, look at this. Oh, here's another problem, and here's another problem. But like you're saying earlier, like it's something you don't really think of. And like when you go into a bathroom and someone's in the handicap stall, and they always come out and they look at you and they're like, oh, I'm sorry. And I always tell them, I used to do it too before I got hurt. Because I did. Like, you don't think of that. You just say, oh, that stall's open, and you go in there, and you don't think about it. So when they're in there, I don't get mad at them. I'm just like, hey, I always tell them, I used to do it too, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
It's something you don't think about.
I just, you know, that also just making me think of the fact that different students with different kinds of, like, learning disabilities or physical handicap, it just gives you, I don't know, it just kind of, like, opens your eyes to things that didn't know before, and then how much grace that gives you for kids going forward. Like the first time that I ever had a student that was like had high functioning autism, I didn't know anything about it. Like I knew a little bit from school, but I had taught for so many years with ever having to like help someone who was in that situation, and it was like this huge learning curve. But then the next time it happened, I just felt really prepared for it, and like it wasn't going to be like this weird thing. It was just, you know, I'm going to love this kid for who they are right now, and then I'm going to try and like help them to grow as much as they can and to really feel accepted in the school. Liz, I apologize. Liz,
what?
Paulo, nope. Sorry, Liz, I love you. I seriously do, but I'm just going to call you Liz P. I'm about to start my first year, and I don't tell people this. I hate drawing attention to myself, but I have cerebral palsy, and at times it makes it hard to get around. What did you tell your students? So we kind of talked about that already, but I think that's really interesting, and it's worth talking about again. So kind of how far do you go into like who you are, and like do you talk about what happened to you? Do you talk about like regular stuff?
Yeah, to go.
You just tell them about
I can go more detail. Like, so I'll tell them, here's how I got hurt. Like, I'll tell them I got hurt on when I was 21, I was a kid, we were messing around, I got hurt on a slip and slide. I'll tell them some things, because there's a lot of things that come along with being paralyzed, but I don't get into much of my personal life. So I don't tell them, this is how I do this, and, this is how long it takes me to, I stay away from my personal life, but I tell them, this is the stuff you'll notice in the classroom. Like, I might struggle with this, or I might struggle with this, but, I can handle it. But yeah, because they'll come up to you as the year goes on, and the questions get even more crazier and crazier, and they'll start asking personal questions, and you're just like, no, I'm not answering. I said, would you ask any other teacher that? No,
probably.
They're not like, yeah, it's true. They're like, yeah, but they're not like you. Like, I just want to know. And I'm like, look, you got the internet. Like, go search it. I'm not talking to you about it. So, but yeah, so I don't go that personal. I'll tell them about my injury and how it affects me in the classroom, and kind of throw some positive things out and stuff like that. But I leave the personal stuff at home. So
yeah, I think that's just good advice for everyone. I have had kids ask me extremely personal stuff. I always chalk it up to, depending on the kid. Some kids are just weird, right? They just ask weird stuff, and it's like, I don't know what happened. But other kids are more like, I think they just feel comfortable, and maybe they don't have anyone else to ask, and so you get really weird questions. And in my room, I actually have a box that has a big question mark on it. We just call it the box of questions, because I'm really creative when I come up with titles for things. And so, the box of questions, and the kids can put any question in there anonymously that they want. And on Fridays, every week or every 2 weeks, when we have like that 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the class you're not really sure what to do with, we'll just pop open that box and start talking about like a lot of different weird questions. And a lot of times it has something either to do with sex or drugs or things at home that someone will be like, my friend has this problem at home with his mom that looks like this, and it's like about someone's hypothetical friend. But I just find that those sort of questions, like, it builds a community of like kids being willing to be vulnerable in class and really talk about stuff, and you can get deeper into your subject matter even, because it's like if you're teaching history, right, just like when I'm teaching like old ass literature books that the kids don't necessarily care about, until I can connect it with their life, then you got something and you're on a tear and you can do like some really good stuff with it. Liz Pavlovchek. Thanks, Liz. She said she spelled it phonetically right. Oh, so part two of that question. She said, also, public transportation isn't very accessible around my school. Any advice, and do you drive?
Yeah, see, I drive, so I have a truck that's all hand controls, and I basically stay in my wheelchair, and there's a ramp that takes me and puts me in the, I get in the ramp, go up, drive right from my chair, and so that's how I get back and from, but I've never done transportation like bus-wise or, other than maybe like Disney or something, but other than that, like I've never really dealt with that, no.
What about where you live now? Is that, do you know if it's even accessible, or like, because it looks like a really area that you're in, but I don't know if it's like, is it like self-contained, or do they have public transportation, or what's that deal like?
I don't think I've even, I haven't really even looked into it yet. No, I'm not sure. I think the worst situation for me here is maybe that it's, we're not in the mountains, but we're just outside the mountains. So, if I wanted to wheel around downtown or like I'm going to hit some steep hills or slopes and that kind of stuff. So, just me going around town, if I wasn't driving, would be tough. But I haven't looked into transportation other than that. No.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of like, so even where I live, I'm just thinking about teachers in general that don't drive. If I had to take a bus to school, like I live, like Philadelphia is about 4 blocks down the street from my house, right? But the problem is there's a river between me and unless I want to just like canoe across the river, it's an issue. And so whenever my car breaks down, it's a total nightmare getting to school. And so when I'm just thinking of Liz's question, I think it's, even if it's something you use all the time, but like finding people that live near you and trying to carpool with them is a really great idea. I find that like, because I live in a different state, it's harder. But luckily, my principal lives in my neighborhood, and so that's really funny sometimes. Last year, my car broke down, and the principal had to pick me up, and my kids were, like, thrilled, right? They're both in their underwear, right? So they're, like, but they're pumped, so they have to, like, my daughter ran outside in her underwear and, like, was like, Dad is here to pick you up. And I'm just like, first of all, it's not like the president is here. But I'm like, and also, it is February, and you have underwear on because you're easing in the house. Because we look like we have no sense, and like, come on. But I just think that that's a really good idea, is to like just find out in your school like who you live around, and maybe would they be willing to, like, if you gave them a couple bucks for gas every week or whatever, or paid a toll or whatever it was, then maybe they could just give you a ride to school.
I think if you're dealing, and I don't know if that's what if she's in a wheelchair or not, but I think when it comes to stuff like that too, like you can Uber, which is a great thing. But for me, I've never done it on my own, because I don't know if you call an Uber, will they just kind of like, yeah, I'll throw your chair in the trunk. Like, they don't know how to do that kind of stuff. So I've never even done that on my own. So that is a big problem though with my truck too. If the ramp goes out, which happens a lot, sometimes the thing just doesn't want to work. And then now you're in a situation that you got to be at work in 20 minutes and you can't get your truck going. So I luckily last year I had no issue like that, but that's what I worry about all the time, because I can't just, grab an Uber or wheel all the way down to the bus stop. So once that happens, I basically just have to call out, I guess. So that would be a big issue for me.
Yeah, that's a really thinking of like, what was I going to say? I forget what I was going to say. Not so secret wife. So I'm going to go into the next question. If I think of it, I'll bring it back up. TIC Life, who's always on here as well. What's up? He said, was there ever a point in your experience where you felt like you couldn't handle a situation, i.e. a fight or a student conflict in class or something like that? You ever have kids like try and fight in your class and it's like you didn't feel like you could kind of get around in the situation or what?
No, I've had it 2 times, and I didn't notice it until it was about to like really go down. And basically, I just kind of I'm 4'3", and these kids are like freshman, sophomore kids, but they're towering over me, of course. So I just kind of get in the middle still and take one kid and just kind of push him towards the door and tell him to go outside. And then that's the only time it's happened. No one's actually threw fists, but they got pretty close. So I still just try to get in the middle of it like any other teacher would. And I'll obviously send one to the office and then wait 10 minutes before you send the other one. But
never send anyone out at the same time. That's you're asking for trouble there. It's like
So.
I think there's one of the funny things about being a teacher, just in general, trying to be creative with things like that, because my first year in West Philly, my students were infinitely bigger than they were in Camden. I mean, it looked like I had a classroom with bears in it. Kids were huge. They gave me a whole football team in one class, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like this is." So there's like that kind of like bro attitude going on in there too. And I used to tell the guys like, "Yo, guess what? If you're gonna fight, like I just want to preface it with this: there's no way my little skinny butt is gonna break you guys up. So like, you better be ready to like throw down. Like I might just record it from my YouTube. I'm not getting in the middle of it."
Yeah.
And then there have been like tons of other ways, depending on the type of class that I had and the type of like relationship. I always, right on my desktop, I have queued up love jams. I have the Karate Kid 2 theme, like the love song in there. And no one's going to fight when love jams are on. You put on Peter Cetera singing and everyone just gets real cool because it's like weird. You don't want that to be, because everyone's going to pull out their phone. Everyone's going to record every fight. And then it's what? Like you got Chicago playing in the background while someone's trying to fight. Or I blow bubbles when kids start fighting. I always have bubbles in my room for some reason. And no one's going to, and then I go like this. What are you going to do? Are you going to fight through bubbles? Like, go ahead. That could be the best part of my whole life.
When they start throwing fists and they're like, "What did Mr. Reynolds do?" He just started blowing bubbles and playing.
Yeah, so like, it could totally backfire. Right?
Yeah, that's all he was doing.
The worst. Or I'll just call them out on it. I'll say, "Oh, are you serious? If we're gonna fight, just hold on 1 second because I want to just like move the desks out of the way so they don't get in the way, and then you can just like throw down, and we'll all still be like Gladiator." And no one ever takes you up on that stuff. And so really the idea there is like to be so outrageously ridiculous that no one's going to do anything. Like what are you going to do? Are you seriously going to fight now? Because I got love jams and bubbles, and I'm going to record the whole thing. So it works. Senior S Spanish Spot asked, is there anything you feel you could do or you could handle better because you're in a wheelchair? Like, are there any... You feel like you have an advantage of anything? And I think that could be like mentally or physically. Like,
I think like I said earlier, like being able to, connect with the kids. I think that was a huge influence. Being able to show weakness on the outside because then they don't see you as, any other teacher that thinks, they got it all together. So I think that was huge. I think a positive too, you can go home early a lot without getting in trouble because you can just make up an excuse pretty good. So you can just say, "Oh yeah, my wheelchair tire's a little low. I gotta get home." So there's those little positives too. But
yeah.
Yeah.
That's I'm going with that. It's I'm just thinking of like I'm not sure who asked that question. Senior Spanish. I think, and I don't know if he teaches. Yeah, he's been. I've talked with him in the comment section on YouTube a little bit, but I can't remember if he's teaching or if he's still in school for it. But I would say that your life's like everything that's happened you up until this point is not as unique as you always do. Especially if you're teaching 120 kids a year, there's a really, you're going to run into one whose situation looks sort of similar to yours. And so I just try and use every single thing that's happened to me to connect with kids. So the fact that, in my experience, it's like the worse the thing was, the more of an in you have with the students. So like my dad died when I was very young. When I was 4, my father had cancer and passed away. And then I grew up with a stepdad that I had a tenuous, not tenuous, kind of a weird situation with him. And so that helps me to connect with kids that have like problems with their dad, or like them. My mom also passed away when I was younger, and kids, if I find out someone had like a death in the family, I have that information with them and say like, hey man, I don't know exactly what your situation is like, but I've been through like that sort of mirrored that, and that gives you a connection with students. And when you're all about relationships in the classroom, like then that's, if you'll take whatever you can get with certain kids. And so I think you can use anything that you've gone through in your life, like, you know, I'm thinking of ridiculous stuff, like if someone's dog died, you can tell them but I don't know if that's really applicable.
No, I tell the kids that's 100% true, because, and I'll always tell the kids too, and I always stress to them that at least by the time the end of the year comes around, that you're going to plan your life and you want this to happen and you want this to happen, but there's a really good chance that something's going to go wrong. There's something, you know, you're going to lose a loved one or something's going to happen. But I try to use my situation to show like it's going to get better. No matter what gets taken from you, it's going to get better, and there is another door that's going to open. There's a way to get out of it. So I always try to stress that to them and let them know like it's never over. And I say, look, I've lost everything from my chest down. I can't move my fingers, and you find a way out, and there is going to be a way out of it. So I always try to stress to them, like, if you're going through something, and I think that helps them, because you'll get a lot of kids that come in and try to talk to you, or they open up about everything to me. And I don't know if that's normal for most teachers, but like they'll tell me everything. And I don't know if that's the one thing I don't know. Is it because of my injury? Is it just because I have a good relationship with them, or is it just because? So I don't know. That's why I became a teacher to begin with. It wasn't because I loved history and I want to tell kids about, you know, the Ottoman Empire, because I love the Ottoman Empire. It's not about it. It was like, how can I have a job that's a positive influence and I can impact kids and just be that mentor for them? Because I noticed, at least from where I was teaching at, a lot of kids, there's so many kids that just don't have fathers in their lives. They really, like, I can almost say it was like 60% of the classes. In each class, like, a lot of them just didn't have no connection with their fathers. So they ended up, you know, they would cling on to me in that type of way, where it was like I was like a fatherly figure to them. And I was like, well, you know, that's, you know, if I could be that for them, like a positive influence, a male positive influence that they've never had in their life, then that's, you know, I'm doing something right, hopefully. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's 100% true. Like you just brought up two things I talk about a lot, I think are really important. And one is that not everyone has that connection with students. I think it's a gift, honestly. I think it can be learned to an extent, but I've always had children like kind of gravitate towards me. And when I was younger, it was not a thing, because when I was little. And then when you get like a teenager and it's still happening, it's like a little bit weird. Like teenager into like your early 20s, you're like, every party you go to, like kids just will walk over to me and be like, hey, do you want to come play Legos with me? And I'm like, you're making me look totally weird, especially because I'm trying to rock this mustache. Like, you know, you're making me seem like a different kind of dude. And so that, once I got older though, and it just kept happening, it just one day kind of dawned on me that like, I could really use this thing for something positive and like connect with kids that are always just trying to connect with me anyway. And so, yeah, I don't think everyone has that. I think some teachers don't want to have it, and some teachers wish that they had it, and they can kind of learn that. But overall, it's like, it's a total gift. And then I also think that when you do have kids with without fathers, like boys or girls, and this sounds kind of like, I don't know, hippy dippy or something, but like that, they want that kind of like fatherly energy, and so they will try and pick that up wherever they can get it from. And I know I did that as a kid. Like I would gravitate like towards certain uncles, or if I had a particular teacher that like I felt like had some, like I could learn something from that I wasn't learning otherwise. It was just, I would just eat that stuff up. And I see that in my own students all the time, where they just come in and they won't ever stop talking to you, or they just tell you about every single thing, and you're like, all right, man, I'm going to be patient, and I'm just going to listen to every single thing that you have to tell me. And it's great. Ben Burge asked, I'm a firm believer in transparency. That said, I'm a T. How do I explain that to my principal without sounding like I'm making excuses for any errors that I make? That's a great question, man, and I've never been asked that. But my brother is an adult PhD, and I always thought it was something that went away. So let me think. I don't know. How transparent are you with anything about yourself that you want the administration to know? Or would you be, like, when you go into a new job, how transparent are you about like your limitations, or is that something you keep to yourself, or what?
It's that thing where they in every interview, when they ask you, what's your weakness, and you got to say something that's like, not really a weakness, but no, I'll just be honest and be like, I'm really terrible at this, but I'm gonna get better. Like I don't say terrible, but I just say I struggle, and mostly, and I'll be honest now too, like I struggle with being that teacher where I know, like, okay, if I punish this kid really bad, like this kid's, like, I've never had any bad relationship with a kid where a kid hated me or anything. I was good with every kid. But you get good relationship with a kid, and then they think they can just like, oh, Mr. Anderson, we're good. And then they think they can get away with stuff. They'll start talking when you're talking. And then then I wrestle with how do you punish that kid without pushing them back, or you'll have a kid that doesn't want to do work. If you punish them, they're done. I'm not working. And for a whole week, they just sit there and do nothing. So I always struggled with that. So I'll tell the administration, like, I struggle with that. I haven't figured out that balance of, having a positive relationship with the student, but also punishing them at the same time and saying, no, you can't do that in my classroom. So I'll be honest with them. I'll be transparent and tell them, like, I struggle with this, and hoping that they give me feedback on, why don't you try this? Because I don't think they're looking to get rid of you. I don't think they're ever like, oh, you're not good at that, you can bounce because we're done with it. Like, I don't think they're ever like that. But I'm straight up with them, I think.
Yeah, I think it's you brought up some really, really good points there that I want to sort of reiterate too. But like, Ben, I'm just thinking also that I'd be upfront with the school about maybe like, here's some stuff that I struggle with, right? Just like Dustin said. But how can you put a positive spin on that as well? Like, what is it about having ADHD that might make you unique in a really good way? Like, so that I don't know how that works out for you individually, and I don't want to like think that I know about you or something, but I just think sometimes I don't do well lesson planning, right? Which is a really good thing to say in front of a whole bunch of people on the internet. But I am really bad at like sitting down. I can draft out a week. I can pretty much know what I want to get through between Monday and Friday. But I do so much better on the fly. I do so much, and maybe it's just because I've been teaching for a long time, but like when I'm driving to school, if I get a really good idea, I'll throw everything else out the window, and I'm like, man, this lesson's going to kill because I was listening to the right song, or I heard somebody say something on the radio. I'm like, yo, that's what I'm going to do today. And I was going and do it. And so, yeah, I'm not good at planning lessons, but guess what? Like, my class is something I'm pumped up about every day. I can get the kids easily pumped up because if you're excited, it's a lot more easy to get your kids excited. Like, if we're reading, I don't know, if you're teaching the Ottoman Empire and you're talking like this the whole time, this is so exciting to me. Like, no one cares because you sound like that guy from Ferris Bueller. But if you're super excited about it. I think that always translates. So I would for sure be as transparent as you think is necessary, especially if you think it's going to kick you in the ass later. But how can you say, yeah, so here's my situation, but this is why this makes me kind of awesome also. And I was going to say something else. Forgot. Dude, I'm not doing a good job at remembering things tonight. You said something else that I really thought was a really great point. But I don't know. I'll come back to it if I think of it. Is this the question from, we don't know who asked this. So I don't know who asked this, but I'm hoping this was the same individual that contacted me earlier. I got an email from someone that said, her question to me was, she was in high school and she's thinking about becoming a teacher, but she has an IEP while she's in high school and she's not very good at math and she wants to be a high school history teacher. And did I think she could still be a teacher if she had an IEP, or was she like maybe not smart enough or not qualified enough to be able to do something like that? And I didn't have a chance to respond to her yet today, but so let me ask you this. It wasn't that I just struggled in high school. I mean, I struggled with things. I was in like resource room for math my whole life because I just suck at math. I just didn't care in high school. Like, kind of like you said, like, I liked my friends. I liked having fun, but I never even read a book because I wanted to until I was like 18 years old. So what makes you, given the fact that you didn't really care about high school, what would make you a good choice for a teacher now? Like, what is it about you?
Because I think I can totally, there's way more kids like me in high school than there are that actually come in the classroom and want to learn. There's 3 kids in each classroom out of the 32 that are like ready to go, like, all right, let's go. And the rest of them are just like there because they have to be, or so I think I can reach those kids because I know what type of teacher that I would listen to and the ones that I didn't listen to. And so I can reach, hopefully I'm reaching it. I'm saying that. I should ask my kids if it worked or not. But I think I can connect with those kids and keep their attention, or, think of different creative ideas too. Because that's the thing. I don't think I ever got up there and just started just talking, just from beginning of class to end of class, just talking, because there's no way. Like, that's like with YouTube. Like, I try to keep my videos at like 8 minutes because I know like 4 minutes in, the kids are just shutting it down because they don't have that attention span. So I'll always find some type of creative way to, and I know I try to keep up with what they like music-wise or TV and try to connect it. A lot of times, like with like The Walking Dead, like, so I'll watch The Walking Dead, and you can really connect history with The Walking Dead, and I can no matter what, and then it'll just pop in my head, and I can throw out Walking Dead stuff, and they totally get it. Or like they struggle with Protestant Reformation, and you try to teach them, like they always say Catholics and Christians are different, and I'm like, because people say you do teach religion and history, it's a big part of it. You teach all the religions, and then you have to teach about the separation. And they don't understand it. They can't understand Catholic and Christians are the same. And I'm like, what are you? And they're like, I'm a Baptist, and I'm like, okay, you're all Christian. And then, so I just do like a big bubble and say, okay, here's the fast food restaurant. You got McDonald's, right? And then these other ones come around. So you just connect it with something else. And then they totally understand. Yeah. It's so weird. It like clicks. And they're like, oh, you should have said that in the beginning. And it's like, oh, okay. So, I think I just know the type of student, and still today, like I believe when I was in college, which is only 5 years ago, I still struggled just paying attention and trying to, so I think I still know, like, how do I like to learn? And I think I can reach those kids by teaching them the same way I learned, so.
Yeah, I think that is such a good answer on so many levels, because what you need to do when you become a teacher is become the teacher that you always needed, or the teacher you always wanted. And so that's why I think it's so important for teachers to kind of band together in schools. And I realize some schools, I just get the sense that it's harder to do that maybe, but I make sure that my friends are like as different from me as possible, because I realize that like I can't get through to every kid. I really, really want to, but if I'm part of a team, then I might be able to say, like, I can't get through to this kid, but you know what? I think this person who has a vastly different personality than I do, or is maybe a lot different than me in a number of ways, that they might be able to speak to a student better than I can. And so I don't think you need to go into teaching being any type of particular person. You just need to be all about the kids. And I think this kind of goes back to Ben's question. This is what I was thinking of earlier too, is like, if you go into an interview, and I don't care what your limitation is, right? So if, for Ben, it was having ADHD. If you're there because you love kids and you want to help them grow and you want to help them be the best individuals they could ever hope to be, I mean, what principal is going to go, you know what? That's not really what we're looking for. I'll be honest with you. I think that ADHD thing is going to totally get in the way. It's like, there's no way if you can sell them on the fact that, like, you're passionate about what you're doing. And I think that goes for a whole host of other sort of limitations. Like, when I got to college, I didn't even know how to study. Like, I had to, like, learn how to study. I was in, like, the tutoring room every single night. And it was just like, I had to learn how to learn again so that I could get out of college, which is why I probably looked like I was on, like, the Van Wilder plan, because I was in school forever. So Scottish Teaching Ninja asked, going into your second year, are there any problems that you face or anything different you would do in terms of teaching practice? Like, so you start off half year in, and then you get to do a full year. What, this next job, is there anything that you're like, yo, I'll never do this again, or I'm absolutely doing?
You know, I started, like, going through the year. I'd write stuff down. I'm like, okay, I need to remember this. I need to remember this.
Yeah.
I think there's things I tried. There's so many things I tried that later on, like, it didn't work. And that was the biggest struggle. It's like, all right, I'm going to try this. And then halfway through the year, I got rid of all that stuff. And now I'm, like, back to square zero. I'm like, okay, none of that stuff worked.
Yep.
So I think that's just part of it. Like, trying to learn and, like, okay, this doesn't work. But I think, I think the issue I had too is, like, the school. I don't know if most schools are like this, but they want it a certain way, and they say, when we come in your classroom, it has to be like this, and it has to be like this. Yeah. So you really don't get the freedom to say, okay, today I'm not going to do group work, because if they come in your classroom and you don't have group work going on, then they're going to be pretty upset at you. Or, like, so there's things that, like, I didn't get that freedom to kind of just explore as much as I wanted to, because I was too scared of, administration coming in and them not doing what, the standard they're supposed to be doing or whatever. But, so that's one of me. And that's what I'm kind of jealous about your setup too, in a way, because I feel like, one, you get to, it's a private school, correct?
It's a charter school. So it's like, people that don't know, a lot of people that are in the U.S. don't know what this is. I should actually do a video on this, but it's like, they're run just like public schools, but kids get in by a lottery. Essentially, like, you just put your name in a hat. If we pick you out, you get to go to our school. So as opposed to, we also have something called magnet schools in the city, which you have to test into. So they kind of, like, take the cream of the crop, and then the kids that can't get into those schools will apply to a charter school. So you get, like, a whole host of different kinds of kids in there too. But let me speak to that real quick, because I think I do have a really interesting situation, but that's very, very, very cool. It's just because the administration, like, backs you up with stuff. And so I've always wanted to teach in a certain type of school, right? I wanted to teach in schools that I didn't think a lot of teachers were going to want to teach at. And so in Camden, it was a mix, right? There were people that were super passionate about, like, teaching in the inner city and, like, wanted to be there for kids, and other people that, like, just couldn't get a job somewhere else, so they just, like, showed up and handed out worksheets every day. And in that situation, I had tons of stuff I was supposed to do. And in the first 2 years, I did it, right? So, like, putting your whatever, like, core curriculum objective on the board. Everything on your board had to be written in a certain way, like your pre-class, the activity that was afterwards, how much time each one of those things were going to take. And after a while, like all like the lesson plans and how I was supposed to do them, after a while, I just realized that none of that stuff was student based. It wasn't. It had nothing. They had like a front that made it look like it was all about the kids and like, well, don't you want the kids to know what letter or what like code from the core curriculum value? Like this is objective C7-9. Like the kids don't give a shit about that stuff. They don't care. And so I don't curse usually on here, but whatever. It aggravates me because what I want to do is teach the kids and meet them where they're at and give them what they need. So I might have a class that's a nightmare with group work. So guess what? I'm not doing group work then. And I think I'm just at a point now where I don't care. And so a lot of things I'm supposed to do, I just don't do them because I don't care. Like I'm so confident in the fact that like I can get the kids to where they need to be, that I'm going to just do it however I want. And then I am really lucky now that I have a principal that gives us complete autonomy in the classroom, right? So like different teachers can have different rules about different stuff. I talk about almost no rules in the beginning of the year. I have one rule in the beginning of my school. Give respect, you get respect. And then I don't do all other rules. I do procedures, but I think that just by changing that language, it lets the kids realize that like, I'm not just here to like beat you down. I'm not here to like get you to just shut up and sit in your seat and be quiet. I'm trying to have fun because I'm in here all day also. And so I want my room to look like something that's going to be fun. I want to have fun. And so even when you're going to have a fight, guess what, man? It's going to be fun to me anyway. And so by blowing bubbles, because if someone didn't hear that earlier and they just think I'm having fun with kids fighting, that's going to get real weird. But so I just think there's a level of like, you just stop caring and you kind of start figuring out creative ways around it where it's like, I used to hand in the same lesson plan every week, right? No one ever read my lesson plans. I just found that they wanted them on Monday morning at 7 a.m. So I literally changed the date and handed in the same one every week because they don't like doing lesson plans. I thought it was stupid.
You can't hear my wife. You can't hear my wife right now, but she's like, do not listen to him. Do not take his advice.
No. And here's the other thing, right? Not everything that everyone does is like, so I'm sure you've observed other people's classes. Some teachers do stuff that works for them, right? Something might work really well for you, like relationships, building relationships with students. Other teachers might feel like completely daunted by that idea of like, oh my gosh, I'm an introvert. I don't really talk to kids on that level really well. I got into this because I like history. And I just think what you need to do is figure out what your strengths are and then go with that instead of trying to compare yourself to every other teacher in the building. And what has happened is I've just figured out things that work for me. Like I'm not trying to be better than anyone else, but really, like I'm always pushing new teachers to that. Like, well, what are you good at? Or like, if you really love being silly, then be silly. But if you're not a silly person, don't go in and try to be silly because it's going to be really inauthentic and you're going to lose. So that's just, I think, a really good standard for most people to go by. So no, don't go in and do a bunch of dumb stuff that like just because like one of us said it or you just heard some teacher on YouTube talk about it. So we're at about an hour. Want to do like 2 more questions?
Yeah, I'm cool.
Cool for that? All right. So Jennifer Murphy asked, if a student asked you why you decided to become a teacher, what would you say? I would tell them because I like getting paid. And it's a lot of money. What is your, like at the base of it, what do you tell kids? What are you willing to let go in terms of like why you became a teacher?
They actually ask you that all the time. I get that question all the time from kids. Then I wonder if they're asking me like, why do I not look like I'm having fun? Do I look like depressed? Like, because
why did you become
a teacher? I'm like, so. But I tell them like I tell them the truth. I was like, I just enjoy kids, man. I love being around you guys, and you guys entertain me, and I want to, So I just tell them exactly how it is. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I just
So let me ask you this, because this doesn't come up too much either, and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. I know for me, and this is not something I talk about regularly on my channel because I'm not there yet. I do have there's a religious piece to that. Like I feel like I literally feel like I'm called to be a teacher. Do you feel that way? Because I know that you have like talked about like the church being a big part of your life on your channel. And do you talk to your students about that, or do you not talk about that?
Yeah, that's always the tricky part, because you can't say certain things. But it 100% comes out. Like, they can obviously tell, like, I'm a strong Christian, but I do tell them, I do say, like, I believe it's my purpose. I believe this is why, this is God's purpose for me, is to be a teacher and to be, and I tell them I picked my job because I felt like, and it's the truth, I picked my job because I feel like this is where, for somehow through all this, through my injury, everything, this is where I was supposed to end up, and that's why I'm here. And sometimes teaching, it's hard, man. Sometimes it is hard, and then I get home and I'm like, oh man, this is the longest year ever. But then I always remember, like, there's no way I can ever quit, because this is what God wants me doing, and I have to keep going no matter what. And then, it helps me, along the rest of the year. But so I will tell them, like, I believe God wants me to be a teacher, so that's why I'm a teacher. So, but yeah. Say it up front. But.
Yeah, I think there's like, and so it depends on the student, right? Whether I'll go like that deep with them, right? So it's usually like, if it's someone that eats lunch with me all the time and that kind of topic comes up and we get into that, I'll do it. But I try not. I just feel like, even though I'm willing to talk about almost anything, there's like certain personal things that I feel like someone's parent finds out and they're like, you're trying to get my kid to think this way, and it's like, no, not really. But I do tell kids that, like, I feel like my job is it's the greatest job in the world for me, right? And I think that there's something to that in terms of, like, figuring out what is your best thing. So I went from, like, wanting to be, and I've talked about this on my channel a lot, like, when I was younger, I wanted to be a carpenter, then I wanted to be a drummer, and I did that for like 6 or 7 years, like playing in different bands and being a session musician and stuff. And then I wanted to be a priest, and then my wife ruined that idea because I can't be married and be a priest, and so I blame her for that all the time. Then I thought about being a clown, which the kids, no one ever believes me, like, Reynolds, now you're just making stuff up. I'm like, seriously, I wanted to be a clown. That I lived in Africa for a very little bit, and I taught there, and I would like go into the hospital and just like blow bubbles or like visit children and like just do silly things. And I thought, I could do this. This could be like my whole job for my life. I'll just travel around the hospitals in third world countries and like make people happy. And so then someone brought up teaching, and I thought, it's kind of all that stuff put together. Like, someone balled it all up, and they were like, you're like caring about people, and you're kind of on stage, and you're a jackass, and like all of this stuff together. And that's kind of brought me to teaching. And so I just, but I want the kids to know that what I'm doing is what I'm doing because I really feel like this is where I need to be, and I'm super excited about being here. And that's actually the first thing I tell my students on the first day of school is like, there's no chance anyone's excited about being here because they're in an all-boys school and you have to wear a uniform and you're in 9th grade. But like, I'm all over this situation. I'm loving it.
Do you feel that?
Go ahead.
Do you feel that crosses that line of the religion line? Because I always feel like if it's not, unless you're saying, oh, you should believe this, you need to believe this. Like, I'm never that way with the students. Like, oh, you need to believe this. This is true. You have to believe this. But I'm never hiding my beliefs. Like,
I always frame it as this, for me, this is my truth, right? And so, you're going to, like, it's not my place. And even like, to go even a little bit more into that, I am, so I like the fact that word discipling is even in your channel title, because I'm a really big believer in that. And so with anything, right? Like, if I get you turned onto books, right? I want to be there to help you like work through that, find good books, figure out how to find good books, and talk to you about that. And I think that being educators is a lot about discipling kids, right? Like, if we just use that word and not like necessarily in a religious aspect, but like, we're always discipling kids to become more educated, to learn more about themselves and who they are and what makes them work, and what they could be going forward. So that's kind of how I frame it, is like, this is what works for me. And that's why I only go into it with students that are like sophomores, juniors, seniors that I've known for a while, and if they ask, like, they'll ask about my tattoos all the time. So like the anchor tattoo that I have, I can't really see on my arm there. They'll ask, and like, if I want to go into the fact that it's my Jesus tattoo, then maybe I will. But like, I don't do that with everyone because I know it's gonna get weird all of a sudden, and there's enough weirdness at school. I don't need any more weirdness. Our last question, Senior S, Spanish spot. Teachers love alliteration. Asked, oh, you have another question. So more of a fun question. Which social studies subject is your favorite to teach, Dustin? I, too, am certified in social science, and my favorite is definitely government. What's your favorite, like, world in there? I know you said Ottoman Empire before, but...
Oh, in world history? Is that what you said?
Okay.
Oh, social science.
Oh,
Okay,
so he said...
Either way. In social
science... which social studies subject is your favorite to teach?
Okay, so I'd say world history, but inside world history, I love the Middle Ages. I think the kids love it the most. Like, you get into talking about, the Black Death and like showing them pictures and just explaining them. And like, if this happened today, like, can you imagine like 70% of the world just dying off? And so I would say world history and talking like Middle Ages. I think that's my favorite subject.
Nice. Someone asked, this is our last question. Somebody asked, are you still wearing the Nikes that Casey gave you?
They don't. The thing about them, you got to keep them charged. If they're not charged up, it's like you can't wear your shoes.
Can't get your shoes off if they're not charged.
It's just one more thing you got to make sure it's plugged in and charged. It's just like they're great. They're just sometimes not practical. But
I would have never ever thought of that, but that's really, really funny. Did your students ever see that video, or like did they know about that and stuff? Or
and I knew, because I try to hide my channel from them, because I was like, I don't want them knowing I'm on YouTube and doing. So I hid it from them forever. And then when Casey did the video about me, and he texted me and it's like, hey, I just posted a video about you. I hope you don't mind. And then I checked it out. I told my wife, I was like, Rachel, I can't go to school tomorrow. Like, all these kids know who Casey Neistat is. And as soon as I got to school, there's like 3 kids waiting outside my class, and they're all freaking out. And I was like, they're like, you didn't tell us you had a YouTube channel. And they're all like, then they're all like trying to watch the videos in class. And I was like, no, put the phones away. We're not watching them. So they were pumped up about it, but it was fun. It was a fun experience, yeah.
Yeah, man. That's like, you cannot repackage that gift. Like, as soon as the kids know, like, I have kids that they're like, me and my mom were watching your YouTube video last night, and I'm like, first of all, most of my stuff is about teaching. Like, would they watch a classroom management tip video or something? But, this year I'm going in and I'm telling people on the front end, because I find it's way less distracting once they know. And plus, all the kids want to be in it now, and so... Yeah. I need to get their parents to like sign off on the fact that like everyone's allowed to be in a video.
In your school, do you like, because you're able to video inside your classroom? See, we want to be.
I am. So my thing is like, I've only ever had kids in my videos so far that I really know their families well, right? So I knew it was going to be a non-issue, or I've talked to their parents about it, but I can't just like film a class, and I'd love to do that, right? I think there would be such value and someone being able to like see what does it look like. My friend Darren, who's just on here, is a teacher in California, and he said he's going to live stream the first hour of school this year, so parents can get a sense of like what it looks like what was your first day like, because like as a teenager, you go home and your mom asks you like, oh, how was school today? You're like, all right, well, what happened? Nothing. And then like, but the teacher would have a whole lot more to say to the parent, and I just think that's. I don't know that I could go that far, because I think it could be a potential safety issue in my school, but I'd love to film classes and like even parts. Like, here's how you set up a class discussion. These are the do's and don'ts while you're doing this. And my students love it, and it has really, really been a connection point for us in terms of like of that kind of stuff. And then, it's funny, students kids all, if I went to see Casey Neistat, my students would be like, go berserk. But when I told them about Gary Vaynerchuk, when I got to go up there, they were like, who's this? But everyone's dad was emailing me like, dude, I love that guy. Do you need me to go on the trip with you? And I'm like, no, it's for the kids, man. And then only after that video came out were the students like, because they made that little documentary about our trip going up there, and the kids were like, this dude is like the real deal on YouTube. I'm like, yeah, man, what do you think? I was telling you, like, Kate, the sleepy teacher, my friend, is saying, I still have no idea who this guy Gary V is. I'll send you the link, Kate. And if you don't like cursing, you shouldn't really watch it anyway. But so awesome, man. Let's call it there. I really appreciate you doing this. It's been awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it, dude. Yeah, I don't know if I can put this on my resume now, huh? You think?
You can. It's like it's essentially an interview, right? Like you just got interviewed for a job.
Yeah,
so,
I'll just hand them a little business card with this link to it and be like, here you go, and just kind of leave and then see if they contact me. I'll try it out.
You can put me on as a reference, too. I'll just be like, yeah, I've interviewed this guy already. I think he's good to go. You should hire him. Could you tell everyone real quick where they could maybe find you on Instagram and on YouTube and they could see what's what there?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is called Discipling Recovery. And then Instagram, I don't even know what it's called.
I think it's Dustin
or DUST.T or who knows.
Yeah, I'll find it and I'm going to link it below anyway. And my wife is yelling it from the other side of the room. Dustin.T.
My wife's doing the same thing right now.
Oh, Dustin.t.and.
Okay, that makes sense.
So, and yeah, so thanks for being on, man. Hey, if anyone has, so people are weird about this sometimes, but feel free to do this if you want to. Those that are still watching, if you have any questions or comments, you can go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. I will answer anything that's aimed towards me. And Dustin, if you want to, if you go see that anyone sent you a question or you want to speak to something, like go for it. I know YouTubers are weird about like different people answering stuff in their comment section sometimes, but go ahead. And then on Tuesday, I have Student of History is going to be on, everyone. He is a teacher, and I'm going to just go ahead and assume that he's a history teacher because that's his name, Student of History. And he has a really great like Instagram account and seems like a really interesting guy. I'm looking forward to getting to know him. So great. Thanks, Dustin. I really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Thanks, dude.
All right. Peace, man. Thanks again, everyone, for watching. Don't forget to leave your questions below. And if you know someone that has you think would benefit from this conversation that we had tonight, go ahead and pass this on to them. And if they have any further questions, they can contact myself or Dustin at his channel, and we'll be sure to get back to them. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Peace.